he gets asked about his situation in Philly and says in no uncertain terms that Daryl Morey is a liar and I will never be a part of an organization that he is a part of. And he repeats it twice. That's the framing here. Again, you know James very, very well. Where was your head at over the weekend when it came to those developments? And then how did this proclamation on Monday morning hit you?
So when the report came out over the weekend, the first thing I thought of was this is not going to end well for Philadelphia, because when you go back to the relationship between Daryl Morey and James Harden over the years, you know, starting out in Houston, it was a fruitful relationship. He got everything he wanted. They enjoyed some pretty successful years together. Coming back in Philadelphia now, there was an understanding that kind of the team around him, it might not have been the most conducive to actually getting to the finals or getting deep in the playoffs. Now, with Daryl trying to take him off of trade talks, James is not going to take that well at all, because he doesn't want to be there anymore. He said that pretty clearly. We saw that this morning. He wants out of that situation entirely. He wants absolutely nothing to do with Daryl Morey or anything he stands for, as you can see. And now, having heard him say that in front of a bunch of his fans and across the world. Also, don't forget the fact that he said it in China. You remember going back to
Yes.
the whole thing with Daryl Morey a few
In
years
Hong
ago.
Kong. Yeah.
It's a political battle right now. So
I honestly hadn't processed that aspect of it. That's
yeah, so
that's
I
that's
think that was a
another layer.
very calculated move by James, but he wants absolutely nothing to do with him anymore. And this is how he's felt for weeks. This is not a new thing. Like, he didn't just wake up today and say, to hell with Daryl. This is how he's felt for a while, because he feels disrespected, and he feels, you know, more or less lied to.
See, that's why it made so much sense to bring you on, because you're already contextualized it in a way that is even deeper. James, like you said, I'm sure knew exactly what he was doing
Right.
with his timing, with his location. And the idea, like you said, too, that it's not going to go well for Philly. Let's kind of spin it forward a little bit. We have a blueprint here when it comes to the Sixers as to a similar situation and how it might unfold. So Ben Simmons a couple years ago, obviously didn't want to play for Philly anymore, felt like he was the fall guy when they fell short in the playoffs. When camp comes around, he didn't want to lose his cash, so he shows up to camp infamously, is kind of hanging out at one of the practices and his cell phone falls out of his pocket. It's just a bad look. Kind of half-asses it for a couple of days, and then before you know it, he's out of there again.
Right.
And then they essentially, send him home, or he leaves, and they figure out the trade stuff. But it takes 6 months. He wasn't getting paid for a lot of that. He ends up getting some of his bread back by way of union, kind of contesting. But like you said, it was messy, very messy. Now we have a James blueprint as well in Houston. It's training
Yeah.
camp time. He doesn't want to be in Houston anymore. I'm going to go party in Atlanta. I'm going to go party in Vegas. I'm going to, barely be out there when we actually compete. I'm going to not connect with my teammates. The John Walls of the world, the DeMarcus Cousins, they're going to get frustrated. The vibe is terrible. It's bad collectively. And then, to a lesser degree, but similar themes in Brooklyn. When he's done in Brooklyn, I'll never forget. I was in that game in Sacramento. That was his last game with the Nets, where one of those where, you didn't have to be a basketball expert to watch that game and go, boy, he's deciding to tell the Nets he's 100% done. So this is what the Sixers do, is what Daryl Morey has done. This is what James does. These two things do not meet very well. This is a staring contest. How do you think it turns out?
I think in this era, this current era of player empowerment and players essentially planting their flags in the ground, I think eventually the situation is going to reach an untenable point where they just have to trade him. Like, if he's not going to report to camp, if he's not, it doesn't sound like he's concerned about the money he might lose, in fines and stuff like that.
What makes you say that?
Just because of how he conducts his business, like how he lives his off court life. He has his wine business. He has other business ventures that are doing pretty well. And it's kind of similar to Ben Simmons, but I'm not sure of Ben Simmons off the court business ventures where
James
he
has
could.
more revenue streams, I think
Yeah,
is
he
what
has
you're
more. He
saying.
has he
Yeah.
has more bread coming in. So,
Right.
if it came down to a situation where he had to be fined, I don't think it's something where he would reconsider coming back to Philadelphia. He just wants out of that whole situation. So if it costs him X amount of dollars to get out and get that freedom, I think he'll take that route. Now, on the other hand, I wonder how Daryl plays it, because as you know Daryl very well, he's also a very calculated individual. He plays chess in his free time. There's a reason why he does that, because every move has to be, right on the money. So this situation, it's going to end up, I think personally, I just think that James is going to eventually find his way out Philadelphia.